Today, my guest is George Goldman. George created a team of highly experienced professionals with a specific area of expertise to best serve the needs of his clients, called the Goldman Wealth Advisory Team. He believes in providing the very best for his clients and giving back to his community. Let's get started. I'm Paul Blanco, and this is Small Steps, Big Wins. All right, George Goldman, welcome to Small Steps, Big Wins. I'm really excited to have you on the show today. When I think back to meeting you 23 years ago, today, this time, it's pretty exciting for me. We had very parallel careers, I should say careers prior to our career in terms of being college athletes and growing up really on the diamond. And you took a very different approach to the business than I did. You started out on right after college in the property and casualty space, and you came here as a property and casualty specialist, and it's been such a great run. So I'm excited to have you on the show today to tell your story.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So let's start right from the beginning. Like, you're an athlete your whole life, go to college, play baseball in college, graduate. How did you end up coming into the financial service wing, but property and casualty side of the business? How'd that happen?
So growing up, I did play both baseball and football, and was fortunate enough to go to college to play baseball. My dream, like many kids, was to be a New York Yankee. That ended with a torn rotator cuff. So I graduated, and on my way home, I made contact with somebody in the area. All I knew about insurance was I had to pay my parents twice a year for my auto insurance. He happened to have been a father of some alumni that I had gone to school with. I got a job. I negotiated very hard for the job and held out for about $18,000 a year.
I made $19,400 my first job.
Right.
So you
so
did better.
We're the same.
I did better.
Yeah. We're the same age group. My training program there was they handed me a phone. And I picked it up, and there was a client on the phone of the firm, and he said he was going to cancel his policy. So, of course, I thought I was getting fired. First phone call. I got in my car and I drove to this little town called Banksville, New York. I had no idea where it was, and I convinced him to stay. And then I went through different positions at a very small firm in Connecticut until 2002 when we met. We shared a vision of creating something that didn't exist. And to your credit, it was your vision. I came on board. We were probably 5 to 7 years before the architecture would allow that to happen. And then I got into financial services.
I'm curious, was there a moment during that time, we were ahead of the curve where we were saying, to be holistic in planning, it was where does property and casualty really fit in? And I knew that we needed a specialist, and at the time, someone with experience like yourself. And when did it click to you, though, that we're probably a little bit ahead here, but you got intrigued by I think you had a passion for that side of the business, and you just never got exposed to it.
Yes. So the firm I was with was a small family-run firm. That really stayed away from financial services for the limit on their scope of abilities. They just didn't have enough staff or support to go into financial services. They were very well entrenched in personal, commercial, and small business health insurance, and they just didn't have the capabilities of expanding. However, over the last 4 or 5 years of my career there, I had developed some clients that had asked me to look at their financial service needs, which ultimately is what brought me to you, is the ability to have that under one umbrella. I never thought that the transition was going to be such a train wreck.
Yeah.
But it was. We were way ahead of what the architecture of the corporation was going to allow us to do. Yeah. And the relationships were going to take much longer to develop. And what intrigued me, the moment that intrigued me was it was an absolute failure. not from where we were going, but from the execution and the implementation and the corporate limitation that they had put on you and subsequently on me, was the actual birth of my fourth child. It's like, I got 4 mouths to feed.
Yep.
I'm going to figure out how to make this work. And you were kind enough to allow me that ability. You said, just go make it work. And then you made the introduction to Joe Lopresti, and he became my shrink for, over a decade. Every Friday morning we had breakfast together. And the first week of every January, we suffered the same imposter syndrome. Like, we'll never be able to achieve that success that we had last year again. And we developed a very close friendship. And I'd be remiss to say that the way that you and Mindy and Joe and Amy have treated me as family hasn't been part of the success of figuring out how to make this work.
Well, I appreciate that. And that's important to us, because that's how the DNA of the business got started here. And, that's not simple to continue to keep. And we've been able to keep that for a really long time. So congratulations on that. I want to ask a little off track question, because I think it's important. You talked about the rotator cuff and you went pretty quick on that. Was that your junior year that happened, or your senior year?
Well, I had an injury and I redshirted my freshman year. And then I had a couple of successful years, both at school, went to the College World Series, played in the Cape, and then pitching in the Metrodome against UCLA in the Wheaties tournament. I felt it pop. I was a little bit stubborn at the time. I didn't want anybody to know because I wanted to keep playing.
Sure.
So I ended up destroying my shoulder socket, and that was that.
In the intern. So what year was that? Your junior or senior?
Yeah, it was my junior academic year.
So how did that, from a mental standpoint, play into business for you? Because that had to be really hard on a guy that spent his whole career playing and competing. Did you find that, how did you mentally deal with that at that time?
Well, I was very fortunate at a very young age to have the support of both my parents, but my dad. You had the same?
Yep.
My dad gave me something before I was a teenager. I'm sure it was after a loss, and I'm sure I destroyed the backseat of the car. And he gave me something that was typed, and I've seen different versions of it, and I don't claim to know where it actually came from, but it was a typewriter typed piece of paper about adversity, and that the wins aren't what define us. It's how we handle the adversities and what shapes us as men.
Yep.
It will ultimately be the losses and the lessons that you learn from that. I wore it in my hat. And, back in the day when you wore a baseball hat, the real sign of that you had played was the salt line on the cap.
Yeah.
Right. So I would fold it up and put it in, and it was tattered and torn. And during football season, I would put it in my locker. And it was something that really helped define me. I mean, I was very fortunate to have a number of great men that were coaches for me in life. And the position that I played oftentimes was pitcher. So you're only as good as the last game you pitch, and you got work to do in between, and it's to get ready for the next. So I have a short memory. So it was a combination of things that helped me. It was also a great lesson that my dad taught me when I was playing football in high school. And we were playing an inner city school that we were going to dominate, and we knew it. And we were very lackadaisical, and it was a Saturday morning, and I can remember it very distinctly. In the first half, I probably made a dozen tackles and a couple of touchdowns, and came out in the third quarter, and we were just waiting to get taken off and let the other guys have some opportunity. And I clearly blew a block. I whiffed entirely. And the game went on, and I did what I did after every game, whether it was baseball or football. I went to my parents and kissed them both. And some of the guys, the upperclassmen, were going up to West Point to have a little fun. So I went over to my dad and I said, hey, any chance you're going to let me go? And he said, third down, third quarter, you whiffed. And it was all about the lesson of the details matter. And it's when nobody's watching that they really matter. But it was also that to remind me that he was
watching,
always watching. So I had some great lessons of how to deal with adversity from the ball field and from a bunch of men. I've said that I've had some great mentors that were males in my life, but that pales in comparison to some of the great women that have been in my life and taught me how to be a man. Right? They could the guys could teach you the discipline and some of those things, but you have a strong woman that teaches you how to be a good human being and a man. So it was a combination of that. I had that in my life for a very long time.
Yeah, it's great.
So it was literally, I tore my rotator cuff. I pitched through it. I even actually pitched a no-hitter after it had happened. And then they said, you're going to go see the doctor. The doctor said, hang him up. There was no such thing as rotator cuff surgery. I mean, I go back to the 80s in college. That's the last century. So went to the coach. Coach said, listen, we'll honor your scholarship, all of that good stuff. I said, Coach, listen, I'm going to finish school and get on my way. I finished school, got in my car and took my Doberman and my 1980 Ford Bronco that got 8 miles to the gallon. And I drove out of the state of Maine and got a job. It was just like what you did. And the next step.
No, but I think you brought something up about pitching that I never really thought about, and especially playing baseball like yourself in college, that you have so much time in between when you're a starter that good or bad, you have to reflect and be prepared. And that's something that is very different than playing, going up the next inning and hitting, and then you get up 3 innings later. So that makes a lot of sense to me. And I love what you said, because it's interesting. I don't want to go really deep into the mentor thing, but when you think about it, I always say that people get mentored from afar and they don't even know sometimes they're mentoring you. So you were probably really aware and watching, and what your dad gave you, those lessons.
I think one of the greatest lessons that I ever learned was from somebody that you became very close with many years later, is Frank Giannini. He was my Pop Warner football coach.
Yeah.
He taught me to run faster than his dog because he used to let Gretchen. And it's amazing. That's got to be 1970 something. I still remember the name of the dog and exactly what that dog looked like because I was looking over my shoulder. And so, you learn those lessons and you get mentored, whether you realize you're getting mentored or not.
Correct. And you like them. So, you fast forward, go backwards a little bit. You get into financial services, you make the transition, you do a great job. You're really starting to build a great practice. And, teaming was something that was really pretty new in the industry. And when you think about teaming, I always used to think that the simplest way to look at it was someone gets to 500-600 clients and they say, I got to get someone underneath me to grow. Well, you took a whole different approach to that. You were a great mentor to a lot of people, and you really formed a team pretty early on in your career here in that side of the arena. What made you do that? And was it because of team sports, or was it just what you loved?
Well, the first decade with you, I went from failure to building a pretty solid practice as a sole practitioner. But probably in the last 5 years of that decade, I slowly started mentoring. And it was, again, your allowance for me to do that with Joe's support and guidance. And at one point started mentoring 15, 20 people.
Yep.
And there were a lot of ups and downs with that. And then, as you said, you actually spearheaded some of the first teaming that existed from a field office standpoint. I had gone through some personal setbacks, lost my father, got divorced, was a single father of 4, went through the Great Recession. And I decided at that point, when given the opportunity, I was going to build something that was going to last and that I loved doing. And as you know, raising children, it's something you love doing, but it's not always fun. Yep. It's not always popular. And sometimes you have to let the kid do something that is going to be a lesson of tough love. But I was, again, very fortunate. The adversity turned into opportunity and focus and discipline. I had, at the time, I think I can say my work wife, Veronica, has been here since day one with me. Yeah, so I had her at my side. And one of the gentlemen that I had mentored, we had developed a personal relationship. But I knew when given the opportunity, I wanted to build something that was based on talent. But more than talent, it was chemistry and collaboration and vision. So I was fortunate to be introduced to Pete and to Dave. And, we set upon our course. But before we got started, actually formally producing together, we wrote our Bible. And that Bible exists today. It's been updated and changed a number of times. But we went through every system that we could to figure out how to make it work, because our goal was to have a boutique and be able to scale it at the same time. So it was going to be a boutique experience. It wasn't going to be cookie cutter. It was going to be high touch, a tremendous amount of empathy for the individuals that we were fortunate enough to work on behalf of. But it was going to be financial planning. And at the time, the industry was wrestling with fee-based versus free, but it was around the architecture of planning. I also thought that I had been on so many teams that had incredible talent, far greater than mine, but they stunk. They were 5-5, 7-5, but they had so much talent. And I was on plenty of teams that had less talent, greater chemistry, and somehow, we're in the playoffs. We're in the state championship. Yeah. We're playing for something big. We're in the College World Series. And it was because those teams had great chemistry. They collaborated on and off the field. They recognized each person's value, whether it was, we used to call them Punch and Judy hitters, right?
Still do.
Right? Is that right?
It's the best way to make fun of someone. I can't hold the ball.
Yeah. But that Punch and Judy hitter had as much importance as the number 100%. 4 that was, stroking them in the alley and, yep. And what have you. So, for me, it was important to get talent because I'm not the smartest person in the world. So I surrounded myself with A+ yep. talent. But I also surrounded myself, and now we're fortunate over the last several years to have been joined by some really key staff. So we have a great support staff. And the final piece of the puzzle, at least in this iteration, Eric joined us a number of years ago. And the collaboration, the chemistry, the fun, the personal side of it, the family aspect of it has grown, and we're tighter now than we ever have been.
Yeah. Now, I know that Pete and Dave, did Chris start with them, Chris Holly, or did he come in between?
Chris came into my office somewhere in 2003, I think, maybe 4.
Yep.
He had joined the firm. The person that he had joined with had left the firm.
Yes.
And we just struck up a relationship. I can only speak for myself. I like Chris very much. I adore him. He's very smart. He's also incredibly coachable.
Yep.
And now has taken those skills and has coached incredibly well.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
So Chris and Veronica are the eldest members, and you'd have to talk to them whether they're happy about that.
They're very happy. I can see that, and the team is just performing. There's one thing I think that's helped you guys tremendously is collaboration, but really you all have complementary skills. And when you go to your analogy of a Punch and Judy hitter, some of the best teams didn't have the best players, but they had the right players in the right situations. So there's many teams in this industry, and I think this is important for all the listeners, that people have cloned and they're very similar, and that works, but it limits the growth that you can have. And I think one of the things that you've done as a leader is not only did you surround yourself with really smart people that you've had that had complementary skills to you and to each other. And then you've given them, I believe, some different roles and responsibilities that plays to those skills. Mm-hmm. So maybe you can just talk about that a little bit.
So I think 2 aspects to that. I don't know if your audience knows, you have done a tremendous amount from a field office standpoint in exposing the firm to outside speakers, to books, to motivational things. And you've put money back, resource back in a field office that typically does not occur in financial services.
Thank you.
One of those, and also for your audience, usually in trouble because I don't always go voluntarily.
Yes.
But one that I did go to was a gentleman, and I don't remember the exact circumstance, that spoke about putting the right people in the right seats.
Yep.
I am who I am. I have a certain demeanor and way of doing things. I'm somewhat opinionated and stubborn. I call that discipline and organization and drive. One of the guys is just wonderful at handling infrastructure, and it was recognizable early, and he jumped into the position when offered. And our infrastructure, I would put against anybody, any team, anywhere. And it's because of what he did.
Right.
Now, backing up to 2010, 11, and 12, when we first started, we ran a tremendous amount of meetings together to get everybody on board with the same branding, the same language, the same delivery, the same packaging, so that eventually we could be elsewhere, not together, but having collaborated so often, we really were speaking the same story. And for us, storytelling is very big to what we do. But also being a chameleon and changing to the room that you're talking to. But you had to really know the story quite well. And you had to really be able to duplicate the templates of how we deliver, how we gather data and all of that. Two of the other guys were very involved with then developing parts of the business that allowed us to then do 4 separate meetings instead of always collaborating.
That's awesome.
We still collaborated back at home office, right? We still saw each other, spent every day together, called meetings together. We're religious about having 2 meetings a week, 1 huddle, real quick, heads up, top line. And then 1 is all numbers and where we're going and with the vision and implementation. Now that Eric has joined us, he's added a whole new level of sophistication on some of the teaching that he does and has assisted some of the other partners on different meetings that required his expertise. So each one of the partners, the 5 of us, has a very specific ownership that they must speak to every week at each meeting. And over the last 4 or 5 years, we've actually developed a retreat that went from a half a day with a couple of beers at the end of the day and catching a Thursday night football game together to now we do a 3-day offsite. We bring infrastructure, but every single person does a presentation on a different aspect. At this point, left with the least amount to do in running the business, having replaced myself with much smarter, much better, much more energetic partners, and the way that they've been able to bring infrastructure now to A+ quality. They handle some of the daily religion that I used to do at 6:00 every morning. I get to come in at 7:45 now.
Nice.
So everybody owns a different piece of the business. And, the first 200 million that we collected from a wrap standpoint, I'd say 80-85% of our meetings were done collaboratively between 2 partners and generally me until they were up and running. And then there'd be another mixture of that. The last 200 million that we've collected, it's closer to 45-55, leaning a little bit more on the solo aspect, but we still do a tremendous amount of collaboration. The way we introduce the team, clients know from the get-go, we embed in a welcome email, a little video that has the entire team. So we still do a tremendous amount together, but have very, very distinct complementary roles in the business.
Yeah, which I think is amazing. So one thing that, I want to ask you, and I know that you come in at 7:45 now, but you're the leader and you've been looked at that. And that's a role that's very hard for a producer because that's one of the challenges, right? You become a great producer. Then you have to become a great business owner. Then if you really want to grow and scale, you have to become a great leader, right? And I think that your upbringing and what you did as an athlete has played really well into you leading and always being captains and stuff of teams. But the one thing that leaders do is they try to make sure that everyone around them is growing at the speed that they need to grow at because everyone has different goals and visions. And one of the things I think you did really well early on was you started to take your clientele and started to put other people, and you started to, back to what I said earlier with teaming, the 500, you give away 2, but you just kept doing it.
Yep.
And you've continued to do that where There's maybe clients where you're sitting first chair, but there's many that you're sitting second now and still involved, but not the same. Why don't you talk about like where that came from and how you were thinking about that? Because I think that's a key to what you've done.
I wish I could say there was some, brilliant revelation. It comes pretty natural to me. I enjoy the locker room, the camaraderie. I enjoy teamsmanship. I enjoy the elbow in the back, the ribbing and what have you. So that part of it comes fairly natural to me. The other part is, again, I have a unique case of imposter syndrome. I have imposter syndrome in that I don't think I'm nearly as good as I am. But the unique part of it is,
I'll say you just think you haven't arrived yet.
The unique thing is that for me isn't paralysis. That's drive.
Yep.
That is the butterfly that I still get in closing a case and being introduced to somebody. If I could still run, catching the kickoff, sure, right? The butterfly just before you deliver or are delivered ahead.
Yeah.
So it always came fairly natural to share. I also believed that if I could give the original partners runways to duplicate, we would achieve much greater success. It took us 10 years. We started with 25 million of what is called wrap business. It took us 10 years to get to 250 million. At the point we were about 225 million, we embarked on Project 350, which was when we get to 350, not if we get, but when we get there, I want everything in the business broken and replaced so that we have no changes to make. As that snowball picked up substantially, we decided to say, okay, it took us 10 years to get a quarter. Now we want $500 million, and we want to do it in half as long, 5 years. We may do it in 3.5 at this point. But what has become the realization for the guys is that their books that they're now lead on are littered with the introductions that they were originally given that came initially to me. Their books are even littered with referrals of those people. Their books are even littered with referrals of referrals of referrals. So I could have never handled that capacity and wanted a life. I had 4 young kids. I was a single dad, and I wanted to be present. So again, I had a wonderful support network around me, but I knew that eventually, the way to really, span this, to keep it as a boutique, not turn it into a transactional, battle every day, to keep it in the form that I dreamed that we would have, was that high collaboration, high empathy, high philanthropy, high touch. And therefore, a lot of those people had to know each other. A lot of the clients had to know each other. And the way to do that was through the original runways of sharing.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. It's amazing. So, well, I guess my last one, this went really fast. This time flew here, but what's next? I mean, I know you're going to blow through the goals you have, but what's next for you and the team?
So our next iteration is now adding a division that will focus in another program that you have introduced. So from a business standpoint, we'll continue to execute and implement. And we go away in September on our retreat to do what's next.
Yeah.
And I suspect there'll be, a $750 million desired goal put out there.
Sounds like you already have that written
somewhere. So jotted down a few different places. But it's also to continue to keep the wonderful chemistry, collaboration, and family we have. And philanthropy has become a very major part of our practice. Giving is very important. We're very fortunate to have great lives. Starting this division with actually one of the gentlemen that I mentored back in my mentoring days. And he's a wonderful guy, and increasing our infrastructure and human capital as we need. But I did a presentation for the guys a couple of years ago that essentially said, okay, we've got an agreement if I die, right? We've got a buy-sell agreement. We've got an agreement if I retire. But you guys got a problem. I love this. I'm never stopping. So hopefully, God willing and health and what have you, we'll do a lot of the same. We'll make the adjustments the industry calls for. We'll keep delivering, hopefully, a boutique experience with a great deal of empathy. And I'll enjoy not only my 9-month-old grandchild, but hopefully if my married daughter is out there, hopefully she's listening, we'll produce a couple more for me.
No pressure though, right?
None.
I mean, listen, when it's all said and done, George, so proud of you. I mean, you've made, you've had, as you said, from your dad, I always wore something in my hat too. So, you've taken adversity in many different shapes and forms, personally and professionally, and you've battled through those, you've led, and you've built something that you can look back on and be super proud, and your legacy, living through is just amazing what you've created in this team. You'll continue to go wherever you guys decide because that's what you've built. And you're right. You got to guard the stuff that you said, the empathy, the family, the culture, that you always have to guard those values. And I always say when values are aligned, great things happen. That was the first thing you did, right? You brought on the right characters and the right talent, and now you've collaborated, and that doesn't happen without a leader like yourself. So congratulations. And, there's so many nuggets here, guys. So make sure you go back and rewind and listen and take all those things, and a lot of wisdom here from George Goldman. So George, go ahead.
I just want to say one thing.
Yes, please.
I have been very, very lucky with the people around me. You can have good influences and bad influences. I got involved with a great girl, and we now have a total of 6. And she said, time to stand up, put your boots on, and get your act together. So whether it's my mom, who's still an inspiration, or the guys around me, or the leadership at the firm and some of the relationships. I mean, we've seen some kids go from high school here to college, to marriage, to having kids and wonderful careers.
Big time.
I mean, I joined you, and my youngest, who just joined us,
I know,
was born 2 months after.
Yeah. It's amazing.
So I think it's also the people that have been around, there's some real good luck, and I've been very, very lucky.
Well, thank you again for all you do and going to do. And I'm excited to have you back when you break another record for the team, and congratulations. And guys, small steps, big wins. George Goldman today. Go on Spotify and Apple, check it out. And really great day, everybody. So thank you. Thanks again, George.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Small Steps, Big Wins. Please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
All opinions expressed by the program participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions their respective parent companies or affiliates or the companies with which the program participants are affiliated. Investments or strategies mentioned in this program may not be suitable for you, and you should make your own independent decision regarding them. This material does not take into account your particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs, and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. You should strongly consider seeking advice from your own investment advisor. Securities and investment advisory services offered through qualified registered representatives of MML Investor Services, LLC. Member SIPC, 6 Corporate Drive, Shelton, Connecticut, 06484, telephone number 203-513-6000.